Good evening and welcome to Mind and Body, a winning team in stress management. This webinar and telelearning series is brought to you by Can Do MS and the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. My name is Brian Thompson, Programs Manager for Can Do MS, and I will be your moderator this evening. For those of us new to Can Do MS, we are an innovative provider of lifestyle empowerment programs for people living with MS and their support partners. Through our programs, we empower people to manage their disease and move beyond their MS by adopting active and healthy lifestyle behaviors. Please visit the Can Do MS website, www.mscando.org, to learn about Can Do MS's online and nationwide in-person programs. Can Do MS is excited to partner with the National MS Society to bring you 15 webinars in 2016. The mission of the National MS Society is to help people affected by MS live their best lives as they stop MS in its tracks, restore what has been lost, and end MS forever. Explore the Society's programs, services, resources, and connection opportunities at nationalmssociety.org. Yes, this evening, David Engstrom is a clinical health psychologist with over 25 years of experience working with people with MS. Dr. Engstrom received his A.B. degree in psychology from the George Washington University and earned his Ph.D. from the University of Southern California. In addition to serving on the faculty at the University of California Irvine Medical School, Dr. Engstrom has authored many publications in health psychology and coaches clients on motivation, stress, and pain management. Sue Kushner has been a physical therapist for over 28 years. She earned her degree in physical therapy at Columbia University and has been on the faculty at Slippery Rock University in Pittsburgh for over 20 years in the Graduate School of Physical Therapy. She works clinically doing home care PT, and in 2006 she was awarded Volunteer of the Year by the National MS Society, as well as serving on the editorial board for their client publication, Momentum Magazine. So at this point, I am going to turn things over to David and Sue. And please, again, continue to ask questions and then provide comments in the chat feature located on the lower left-hand side of your computer screen. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Dr. David Engstrom and Sue Kushner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful webinar. I'm so excited to be here, and I know Sue is too. I want to start off with one of my favorite quotes from John Lennon. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. Isn't that true about most of life? If you think about your normal day, when your mind is trying to be on the present, it's always on the future. It's always what's going to happen next. And I want to sort of focus my part of the conversation tonight on that very thing. If we think about stress, definitions of stress, it's not what happens in your life. It is a psychophysiological reaction. That is a mind-body reaction, mostly about time. If you think about stress, how much of it is determined by your trying to control your time? Time and management of time is really an important factor. And secondly, how much do you feel in charge of your life? And you know, all the years I've been working with Can Do MS, that's a really important feature because feeling in charge is a very important segment of MS treatment and rehabilitation. Stress always begins in the mind, but doesn't it live in the body? I want to work that definition through a little bit for you. First of all, mind-body connections. We're all connected in our mind and body all the time. And if you think about it, even simple little tricks can let you know how your mind influences your body. For instance, have you ever brought a really fresh lemon home from the store? And you take that lemon in the kitchen and you wash it off very slowly under cold water and you get it all clean and you can feel all the bumps on that lemon and it's all clean and you maybe wipe it off with a towel and set it on a cutting board and take your very sharpest knife and make a clean slice right through that lemon. And as you make that slice, you pick up half of that and you can see the seeds and the segments all around the edge of that lemon. And you hold it in your hand and very slowly begin to squeeze that part of the lemon So some of the juice comes out and the seeds come out and dribble down the heel of your hand into your sink, and you can smell that aroma of that really pungent, fresh lemon. Now, I would guess right now that many of you have a little more saliva in your mouth than you did about 20 seconds ago. It's a very stupid example, but at the same time, it shows how our mind can influence our body. All you had to do was think about that lemon, and it produced a salivary response in your body. So our minds and bodies are always connected. On the other side of things, how does your body influence your mind? Well, my favorite example is, I don't know if you've been to a department store or a hotel or a place where they have an escalator that's broken and stopped. You ever try to walk up the steps of a broken escalator, find that those steps feel weird and you lose your balance a little bit because you're so used to holding that rubber handrail and riding up the escalator? Our body always influences our mind. This works in both ways. Our mind influences our body our mind. Well, I think it's important, especially with MS, to discuss how you interpret stress, because your personal impact depends more on your perception than the actual stressors themselves. Have you ever known two people that maybe have a similar, very negative, bad experience, and one person copes with it really well and the other person falls apart? Why is that? That's because people sometimes interpret stress as a threat. They see it as a threat to their survival, their longevity, the progression of their disease, or they might see it as a challenge of something they might want to do. And again, just to put in a little pitch for can do, that's what we push, is the idea of seeing things that are stressful as challenges rather than threats. Well, how do we all interpret stress? You know, a lot of things are physiological. Remember, stress is a psychophysiological reaction. Let's talk about some of the reactions. Some people, when they're exposed to stressors, develop rapid, shallow breathing, where their breathing is coming more from their chest and their shoulders rather than their belly, where we all know we're supposed to breathe from. I don't know how many of you have dogs. We have a couple of dogs. You ever watch your dog when it's asleep? All the breath comes from their belly. Watch a newborn baby breathe. It's all from their belly, right? But as we grow up, some of us develop more shallow, rapid breathing from our chest and our shoulders. Perspiration or sweating, not the kind where you work out, where you have perspiration on your back and your face and your armpits. It's more the kind of perspiration that develops on the palmar surfaces of the hands, the palms of the hands, the bottoms of the feet. You ever shake hands with somebody that has kind of a wet handshake? Some people develop stress by perspiration. Rapid heart rate, seen a little bit more in females than males. It's called tachycardia, usually not serious, but some people, when exposed to stress, develop a rapid heartbeat. Muscle contraction is seen a little bit more in males, but seen in females as well, where you get to the end of a long, hard day and you feel like you have to crunch the muscles in your neck around and everything feels tight. We all know what muscle contraction feels like. Or maybe you've been to a dentist that tells you that you have bruxism, which is basically clenching or grinding of the teeth. That's a muscular response to stress. Increased blood pressure. Some people have, I'm sure some of you have had what we call white coat hypertension, where your blood pressure is absolutely normal when you're at home. You go to the doctor, you're sitting in that exam room, 60 degrees, you got a little paper towel over you, you're shaking around, and your blood pressure is high. That's common in people who have stress. Increased adrenaline. You know, adrenaline is an interesting kind of hormone. Have you ever been in a near-miss auto accident where you almost get creamed in the car and you suddenly feel that warm rush that just lasts about 15 seconds and then it's gone? That's what adrenaline feels like. And along with is a stress hormone called cortisol, which is also developed. Sleep changes. I'm going to talk about sleep a little bit later, but you know, commonly stress-related sleep changes are either of the simple insomnias, either the inability to fall asleep, which most of us have at early ages. You all remember when you were 15 years old and couldn't turn your brain off and fall asleep? Or as we get older, and I hate to tell you all this, but that starts at about 30 years old, we tend to have more trouble staying asleep. So more people who are older, and I'm in that category, fall asleep just fine, but they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, can't get back to sleep. And then there's the old fight or flight thing where, remember the old example in maybe one of the classes you took of that saber-toothed tiger in the old caveman tales that comes toward your cave and you feel like you either have to fight or flee? A lot of what we do is freeze. A lot of what we do is just freeze up with that stress. So there are many more physiological reactions that are a result of stress. How do you feel stress? What are your stress reactions in your body? Do you develop tight, painful muscles at the end of the day? Quick, shallow breathing? A lot of times when stress is there, we breathe in rapid, shallow ways, fast heart rate, frequent upset stomach. Gastrointestinal symptoms are very common with stress, and they're often mistaken for things that are more serious. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sue, who's going to do a few slides for you.
Thanks, Dave. And I would like to say hello to everybody all over the country, and thanks for joining us. And doesn't Dave have the best voice for a clinical psychologist? I love his voice. I've known him for years, and it's so nice to hear his voice. So as Dave was talking about some of the negative physical and physiological reactions that we all get to stress, I would like to talk about how some of those physiological reactions are negative, but when we use them in the form of exercise, they can be positive. So it's almost like the enemy of the enemy is a friend of mine. So with exercise helping to combat stress, some of these physiological reactions can be very, very helpful actually. So you want to look for the similarities. They are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Some can be very helpful in many ways when they are brought about by anxiety and letting mind control the body. Then they can be very hurtful, very negative responses. And you want to be aware of falling on that slippery slope when things just start to snowball and you feel like you're totally out of control with your stress reaction and your lack of control in your life. And in an earlier slide, Dave had mentioned being in control of parts of our lives. And I think that is true for anybody with or without any disease, just the desire to have some control, even when things are crumbling, even when our backs are against the wall. But the feeling of being in charge, having some control over our lives is paramount to feeling successful in whatever aspect of our lives that we're dealing with and whatever our problems are and our challenges. So our minds and bodies do not need to be enemies. They can work together. Some people think that, they mix like oil and water, especially if you throw MS into the mix. They are not going to mesh at all. But they can and should mesh. They should intermingle, and we want to make the mind and body augment each other. See the picture of the nice little, we'll say that's a mojito or something nice for the summer. Some interesting ingredients mixed in together that you might not think would work well together, and they do. I just want to say a few words on our requirements, our body's requirements for physical activity. I'm going to put it in the form of the U.S. Surgeon General's report on our needs for physical activity, but this goes back to caveman time. We need to move. We are built to move. We are meant to move. How much do we move? A lot of people, very little movement per day, and that's with or without any sort of disability. Significant health benefits are obtained by moderate activity weekly, 30 minutes a day on most days, and we like to say at least every other day. If you can get 4 days of activity in per week, that is wonderful. Now, some people have really physical jobs, so you might not need as much physical activity, although even construction workers and such, they don't get a lot of cardiovascular activity, so they have to seek that out. But physical activity reduces risks of so many conditions that are known to us, especially in Western society. Coronary heart disease, hypertension, colon cancer, diabetes, and you would have to have just crawled out from under a rock to not realize the things that I am mentioning. Some statistics, though, are frightening. More than 60% of American adults are not doing enough physical activity in their lives. Of that 60%, 25% are doing nothing at all on a daily basis. And that is extremely detrimental, not only to your body, but to your mind. And we all know that we need physical activity in our lives, and that is how we are built. Does MS challenge you with physical activity? Yes. And as I mentioned in the slide, that's not a news flash. So MS and some obvious stress that it induces, physical limitations. And they can range from foot drop to numbness and tingling to muscle weaknesses that make the body asymmetrical. They may affect your gait, your ability to walk. They may affect your fine motor skills, your upper extremity hand strength. There's just an extremely wide variety of physical limitations and challenges that are presented by MS. As David mentioned, difficulty sleeping, that's kind of normal as we age, but especially complicated by MS. Cognitive challenges, financial strains that MS may cause, relationship challenges, and we've had some really nice can-do webinars on relationship challenges. Bowel and bladder difficulties. Not only are they difficult in the nature that they present you with the problems, but you may not be able to get to the gym or get into the swimming pool to do your activity because you don't want to leak. You don't want to have an accident. You don't want to go out to a movie. You don't want to go out on a date because of bowel and bladder difficulties. And then fatigue. Fatigue is always rated the number one complaint, physical complaint of folks with MS. And fatigue is really, it's difficult. Exercise is proven time and time again to be shown to reduce stress. The thought of exercise, though, for many a person can increase stress. Like, how am I going to fit this in? I'm supposed to be doing this each and every day. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how much to do. So instead of just jumping in with 2 feet and doing some activity, a lot of people procrastinate, and just beat themselves to death, and their stress level increases. So you need to find what works for you, what suits you. We like to use the image of a toolbox. You need to have your own toolbox that is specific to Amy and Alan and Albert and people's names that I'm saying on the participant list. They have to work for you. And I like to tell patients that if it works for you, it works. Somebody may love to do classes. You go to a rec center or a YMCA or a class sponsored by the National MS Society, you shut off your brain and you literally follow the leader. And hopefully it is somebody who knows something about MS. Other folks like the privacy of their basement. They are in hideous clothes. They pop in a DVD and follow it and go crazy. So you have to find what works for you. Even if it's just getting 10 minutes in 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, that works for you. So you also need to have a nice variety of options for a variety of reasons. You need to prevent boredom in your life so that you stay motivated to do the things that you need to do. You need to have plans A, B, and C. So if it's not a good day, or if you're not feeling well, you don't have access to your usual swimming pool, or you're traveling, you can still do something else. There was just a nice article in the Wall Street Journal last week of how a variety of people find that they can exercise and do little bouts of activity wherever they are. They emphasized, or they highlighted a realtor. He said while he's waiting for clients to come to his the house that he's showing, he goes up and down the stairs several times, or he'll drop on the nice clean floor and do some push-ups. I mean, it was really a unique article, but it just shows that you can do it anytime, anywhere that you are willing to carve out, some creativity and some time to do it. Be prepared to overcome the barriers, both physical and psychological. And that was a note, to me from Brian. I was supposed to add some citations there, some scientific literature to back that up, but believe me, it exists. So forgive me for that. So benefits of exercise. Again, this is nothing new, but I just want to touch on it briefly. There's so much clinical and basic science research that shows that the lesions related to MS can be prevented or altered by exercise, and that is huge. It is certainly well known that exercise can decrease depression and anger, and there's a lot of that related to MS. There's a lot of that everywhere, road rage everywhere. It can show improvements in cognition, neuroplasticity, and a great improvement in social interactions. Exercise can be a neuroprotective agent, so hopefully decreasing, along with a variety of disease-modifying medications, etc., for neuroprotective agent. And it can certainly improve your physical function on a daily basis. Now, Dave can really talk a lot about this too, but as a physical therapist, I like to say that we realize there are a lot of barriers to exercise and activity. As I mentioned before, fatigue probably being the prime enemy of most folks with MS. Pain and altered sensation, spasticity, weakness, stress, time. Everybody is up against the wall with time. Accessibility, lack of good sleep, lack of knowledge of what to do. That's where professionals will come into play. You really need to consult your physician, your physical therapist, occupational therapist, like, hey, where am I weak? Where are my muscle imbalances? Oh, I didn't notice that I had a little bit of foot drop and it's making me trip more, and I may need an assistive device. I may need an ankle foot orthotic. I may need a cane or loft-strand crutches. So just the knowledge can come not just from you, but from your healthcare team. Lack of self-confidence, just go out and do it. Really, nobody's paying that much attention to you when you're going to do your activity, so just do it. Depression is a huge enemy of physical activity. Anybody who's gone through any depression knows that as a fact. Balance issues, they can be very, very trying for physical activity. And as I mentioned before, bowel and bladder issues are an extreme deterrent to folks to do physical activity. So you want to make exercise fit into your lifestyle instead of the other way around. I remember when I had a couple young kids, my one friend and I, we would say, oh, good Lord, it's like the stars have to be properly aligned to get in a workout, on a near daily basis. But you know what? It's up to you. You're the captain of your ship. You are the cog of your wheel. You need to make exercise an extreme priority in your life. And even doing that, you're probably lucky to get 3 and 4 times a week with activity. As I mentioned before, assess what works for you. What are you physically close to? What do you love to do? Do you like to be alone? Do you like to be in groups, with your significant other? What's realistic? What fits into your day? Do you like something that is sponsored by the National MS Society? Are you close enough to get to a yoga class, to a swimming class? So, there will definitely be challenges each and every day, but you have to make exercise the priority in your life. I even have to say personally, I go into work a little bit later than maybe I should, say 9-ish, 9:30. But I get my workout in the morning because I realize then nothing's going to come up at lunchtime if I tried to do my workout at lunch. If I used to try and do it after work, invariably something came up and then kids come along and there's basically a snowball's chance in hell for me to do it after work. So I just found out that, I'm going to carve out this time in the morning and, the heck with everything else because nobody else is going to do it for me. So again, just finding out what works for you is really important. And then take a minimalistic approach to your routine. Keep it from being overwhelming. Keep it to 10 minutes. Keep it to this activity, in the morning, noon, and evening, or 30 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and just don't get overwhelmed. Don't get stressed out by it. And it should be enjoyable. And think of overall wellness. And it's not just physical activity. It's not just emotional or psychological activity. It's all of these things that we have listed, such as diet and nutrition, stress management. Spirituality, I think, cannot be underestimated. It's really important in my life, and the folks that I know that seem to be doing well physically and emotionally and mentally usually have a spiritual component in their life. Think of exercise not as, this enemy, this curse from hell. Think of it as a leisure activity. Think of it as fun. You need to take into account what are you good at adhering to, what motivates you. Is it being healthy? Is it being thin? Is it, feeling good, having high energy? Sleep hygiene is very important. Dave may talk about that, just getting yourself ready to take the plunge in the evening. Think about your alcohol intake. Does it help you with a little bit? Does it undo you with too much? Relationship health, ability to adapt, psychological health, mindfulness. These are all pieces of the pie that we like to talk about considering wellness. And with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Dave with the nice voice.
Thank you, Sue. You have a great voice, too.
Mm.
Well, Sue brought up many interesting points, and I think you all ought to really think about that in terms of increasing your exercise. But I think the minimalist approach is very important, and she mentioned that word, and I think it's great because often the goals that I set that fail are ones that are too complicated and too time-consuming, and I get the idea that second cup of coffee is much better than going out and exercising. So think about that a little bit. Let's go back to mindfulness. What is it? I don't know how many of you have practiced mindfulness at all, but it's a very interesting technique that I use all the time. I use it every day myself, and I use it with my patients every day. It's basically just a state where you're letting go of your thoughts of the past and the future, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's a state of becoming aware of yourself and your immediate surroundings. What's in the room right now where you're sitting? Do you feel a cool draft on your legs like I do right now because I'm in shorts in Arizona? What are some of the symptoms that you feel around your body? And also, it's just about being calm and being present. And present's a hard word to define. Present is basically just being still and being in the present moment. So here's a place this is right next to our house. I run by this lake every morning when I do my exercise, and the other morning I woke up and went out for my run, and I took a picture of the sunrise over the lake. And, that's something I can look at every day, and it just, for that moment when I'm on that bridge over that lake, it just slows me down and makes me think about what I see right there. It's a little bit of a small picture, but there are a couple of V's of geese or ducks floating up on the lake, and there are palm trees, and they're swaying in the wind. So you need to think about something that's your anchor for mindfulness. What about time? Remember my definition. Stress is a psychophysiological reaction about ideas regarding time and control. Don't we spend a lot of our waking hours focusing on the future and the past? Think about people you know and yourself maybe. How many people do you know who maybe had some traumatic thing happen in their past life? Maybe they were abused as children, had a horrible divorce, and when you're around that person, all they focus on is the past. On the other hand, don't we often predict the future? I call it what-ifing or fortune-telling. It's basically what's going to happen. Is my MS going to get worse? Am I going to end up in a wheelchair? Am I going to get much, all those sorts of negative things that we think about. Nobody ever predicts positive things, right? Does anybody ever wake up and think, I wonder if I'm going to win the lottery today? We focus on the negative stuff. That's the way we construct time around the past and the future. Einstein said a couple of interesting things about time. Most of them I don't understand, but this one I do. He made a distinction between objective and subjective time. What's objective time? Well, I can look at my clock right now, a nice old digital clock, and say it's 5:32 p.m. That's Phoenix time. That's objective time. What's subjective time? That's the way we all tell time in our mind-body. Have you ever been to a dentist, maybe for a fairly painful procedure that's lasted 20 minutes, and when you leave the office you feel like you're in the chair for 4 hours? We all know that feeling. That's subjective time. Have you ever gone on a really pleasant vacation for a week, and you get home and you feel like you're only gone for 2 days? We shrink, we expand time, depending on the way we tell time. And those things are all non-mindful states. A mindful state is just being present and kind of letting go of the past, letting go of the future. I have to mention just a minute about the type A personality. I'm sure you've all heard of, we all like to say, he's a type A, she's a type B. Well, the type A person behavior pattern is basically a person who has time pressure, competitiveness, achievement striving, impatience, and hostility. Those are the main features. And just to break it down for you, a lot of research has gone on about this. And it turned out in the early studies that people who were type A died earlier of heart disease. It turns out that people who have hostility are the ones that seem to die earlier of heart disease. So the other things about being impatient, time pressured, competitive, don't seem to matter as much as hostility. So the one bit of advice I can give you about this is watch your anger and hostility level. Very important. Well, ideas about control. Think about your life right now. How much do you think you can control, and how much is just a perception of how much you can control? A lot of things we think about are things that we can't control very much. If you made a list of all the things you worried about all day long, if you went back and checked that list, you'd probably find that 95% of them are things that you have no control over. But those are the things we spend our mental time on, worrying about things we can't control, trying too hard, feeling overwhelmed. When we have all those thoughts about things we can't control, it makes us feel more like a victim. And that's the part of external locus of control that's important. You've got to get an internal locus of control where you feel in charge of things. So, to kind of recap this, when you think about managing your mind, here are some unhelpful thoughts. Those are thoughts that will derail you at certain points. And I like to call it brain chatter. Don't we all sometimes rehash the past? I've already given you examples, but it's very easy to sit and think about all the things that have happened to you in your life, especially negative things. That's unhelpful thinking. Labeling yourself. I am disabled. I have a disease. I'm lazy. I'm stupid. We all label ourselves all the time. It's very important to get out of that track. Mind reading. I mean, I'm sure this is more of a social unhelpful thought, but maybe you work at a place and you've walked by somebody every day and they wave to you and you say hi, and one day you walk by them and they just ignore you. What do we think right away? They hate us. They don't like us anymore. We read people's minds all the time. Disqualifying the positive. Maybe you've had 95% of your daily activity being positive, but maybe you walked into a room and tripped on the carpet walking in, and you fell over, and you get yourself up and you feel like an idiot. What are you going to remember the next day? You're going to remember that one thing and disqualify all the positive things that happen. Exaggeration. I have a disease. I'm going to get worse. Life is at an end for me. We exaggerate our thoughts all the time. And the last one's my favorite. We've all done this, misfortune telling. It's mostly the what ifs. What if my MS gets worse? What if I lose my Social Security? What if I get a divorce? Don't we think about those negative things all the time? Those are things, chatter things that you can think about that you might be willing to improve. So here are some things that I think you ought to think about in that regard. How can you dispute unhelpful thoughts? When you have one, am I going to get a divorce next week? How real is the threat? That's the first thing you need to think about. What are the chances that this will happen? How do I know that this will be the outcome? These are the three key questions you have to ask yourself to dispute those unhelpful thoughts. Because in my construction of the way we think, we have to replace those with helpful thoughts. And if you're walking around with unhelpful thoughts all the time, that's not good. The bottom line, my perspective is don't believe everything you think. And none of us can stop thinking, right? What are your stress reactions? Now that I've gone over these, what are your stress reactions in your mind? Do you find yourself dwelling a lot on past events, the things that have happened to you in the past? Or do you end up misfortune telling by doing the what ifs, the what if this is going to happen in the future? How do we know what's going to be in the future? We have no idea. But don't we spend a lot of mental time on that, disqualifying the positive? Make yourself a little list of positive things you do every day. Maybe after this seminar tonight, you will think about exercising more. Those are the things you need to write down. Maybe you exaggerate things a lot. This thing is a lot worse than I expected it to be. Exaggeration is another way that we can have stress reactions in our mind. Getting back to Sue's point about yoga, this is a nice poll. How often do you practice yoga? And you can all answer this. Regularly, occasionally, tried once or twice, or never. Very important things, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sue now.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, in an ideal world, I'd love to be each and every one of yours individual physical therapists and be able to work with you one-on-one. I can't do that. But I do want to talk about some of the things that I find really, really useful related to MS. I'm going to go back one slide, and this is the responses from all of you regularly. Oh, that's very good. Occasionally, tried once or twice. Ooh, I do cringe at the never. But I do want to say a few words about physical activity and exercise, but let me start with my favorite for mind-body integration, and that is yoga. And again, you would have to have crawled out from under a rock to never have heard about the benefits of yoga, and I just want to emphasize those a lot tonight. I am absolutely stunned by how much I use yoga in PT practice and vice versa. When I teach yoga to MS classes or folks in just a regular class, I really, really try and educate them on the body. And then when I teach folks with MS, I really try and emphasize the mind part of it. But there's such great mindfulness related to yoga. So it's a practice of breathing, postures, movements, and meditation, and you can see the benefits there. And if any of you have ever tried it, and I really feel badly for the percent of you that never have, you really need to try it because it truly does all of the things that are listed. You will find that personally, and it is proven scientifically. The basic physical things increase stretch and flexibility, balance and coordination, body awareness, decrease muscle tightness, stress. I have never walked out of a yoga class that I have taught nor taken that I don't feel better. Increased lung capacity, Dave mentioned breathing, how important it is. Increased ability to concentrate. It's fabulous. It's wonderful. There are a lot of types of yoga, and we have done some webinars on yoga. You can look at those archived. You don't get caught up in which type you're doing. Just find one that works for you. If you go to a few and you're thinking, these aren't for me, keep trying. In general, I would say avoid hot yoga, avoid iron yoga. You want to find what works for you. The type that I teach is pretty mellow. I personally look at it as my day off, and from beating my body with other things, I do stretching. It's great. Do you like something with more meditation, more movement, just breathing? Sometimes I will finish my class. Well, I always finish my class with several minutes of final relaxation, quiet, breathing in a pose that you like. Sometimes I try and increase that to 5 or 7 minutes, and I know that stresses out some folks. Just lying there or sitting there doing nothing for 5 or 7 minutes. And it's a really great light bulb that goes off in their head like, wow, this stresses me out, so actually I need to work on this and do more of that. And, there's a lot out there about meditation too, how helpful it is, different types of meditation. So look for something that incorporates a lot of these qualities and one that you like. And it really is a beautiful blend of science and art and mind and body. It takes a while to get the hang of it, to really get used to it and start to feel it, literally and figuratively. It's not going to happen once a week in a month. So if you start to like it, please, please, please just hang in there and keep going with it. If you don't like it, try different types of yoga. It should be fun and beneficial, and there are some really nice yoga DVDs specifically for folks with MS. Please go online to look for those. Again, you can pop those in the privacy of your own home and go to other possible types of exercise. Tai Chi, slow, controlled, patterned movements. It really helps with balance and coordination. Also a great mind-body connection activity. Martial arts, they can be pretty aggressive, but they can also be modified. They're wonderful for requiring concentration and, again, the mind-body connection. And I listed some other things that might work for some of you. Some of you, might be just gagging at the listings that I have. Zumba, some strengthening or sculpting classes. Drumming is something new out there. I do love aquatic classes. You don't need to be a swimmer. Just going in and doing some water aerobics, walking laps in the pool, putting a flotation vest or wrapping yourself in a noodle so you float. It's wonderful. Make sure the water is a cool temperature, and water has a really nice calming effect. And the National MS Society sponsors a lot of excellent aquatic classes. And like I said in the slide, think of how calming the lull of the ocean is. And the water can be like that. In general, I just like to emphasize to people that you want a well-rounded program, and this might take a physical therapist, a personal trainer, to make sure that you have aerobic activities in there. You want to work on strengthening. You want to work on flexibility. And as I mentioned, walking, hiking, however modified it might be, different types of biking, rowing, etc., just to get your heart pumping and stay heart healthy. And that's for everybody, not just folks with MS. Everybody needs that. Meditation can work on core muscles just through the seated posture using a Swiss ball. Can also help with breathing. And make sure, like I said, that you have a really well-rounded program, hopefully with input of a healthcare professional. And then incorporate balance, literally and figuratively into your life. And I will pass things on to Dave again for looking for balance in your life.
Thank you, Sue. I think she brought up some really excellent points, and I want to point out to you all that I'm a lifetime drummer, and I teach drumming classes to MS patients out here in Phoenix. I love it. And rhythm, there's something about rhythm that just really makes people be still and be mindful. So if you're at all interested in rhythm, look for a drumming class. There are a lot of them around, and they're wonderful. I took this picture actually in Colorado, very close to where the Can Do MS program is. This is the Eagle River, and I went fly fishing too late in the season, and the ice was already formed, and I just love the look of that little round rock out on that thin sheet of ice. Just looked like my idea of what balance is in your life and what we need to look at. Here's a little concept that I think is important, and you might want to keep this slide, because when you get stressed about things, look at what you can avoid. Can you avoid needless stress by not taking on additional responsibilities, by declining things in your life? Is there any way to avoid that stress? That's the first A. The second A is alter. Change the situations you can't avoid. I love time management, and I teach classes on time management all the time. It's really important to know what your schedule is every day and to partition your time accordingly. And if you can't avoid and you can't alter, hey, we all know that's part of life. You've got to adapt to the things you can't avoid or alter. Put the situation in perspective. Here I am in this stupid wheelchair, and I can't do anything about that right now, but a lot of other things in my life I can do. Slow down a little bit. Use imagery. Practice relaxation. There are hundreds of ways of adapting to situations that might cause stress. You know, I've kept this picture in my slide collection for a long time for a couple of reasons about sleep. Number one, I think she's kind of pretty. And number two, I wonder if anybody looks like this when they wake up in the morning. Look at her perfect lipstick, perfect brows, her hair's all in place. Wouldn't you like to see before and after how she really looks when she wakes up in the morning? I think it's a hotel ad or something. But anyway, here are the points. Oh, first of all, how many of you get at least 7.5 hours of sleep per night? This would be a really good summary to take. So why don't you poll in on that? 7.5 is sort of the minimum, as I'm going to point out. In terms of managing your sleep, okay. So it looks like it's not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Almost balanced, 48 and 51%. That's great. 7.5 is sort of the critical minimum of what you need. You want to protect your sleep time because sleep is an area that's often neglected, especially with MS, and it's very important. The ideal number of hours of sleep is 7.5 to 8.5 hours. Any sleep doctor will tell you that. How do you know if you're sleep deprived? Well, you're probably sleep deprived if you are falling asleep in this meeting right now. Then you're probably sleep deprived. You're probably sleep deprived if you need an alarm clock more days than not to get up. Here's a good one. You're probably sleep deprived if you fall asleep immediately when you lay down. It ought to take the average human about 5 to 10 minutes to fall asleep. If you ever slept with somebody who has sleep deprivation, as soon as they lay down, they're horizontal, they're gone. They're snoring away like crazy. They wake up a half an hour later. But, you know, that's a good way to measure it. Look at the number of minutes that it takes you to fall asleep. Look at how sleepy you are during the day. I'm a big believer in rituals, and I think anything related to sleep, you have to make a ritual in your life. In the evening, when you're preparing for sleep, if you have sleep problems, think about taking a blank sheet of yellow lined paper and writing out all your worries and concerns for the day. That's a great way to do it. Take a warm bath a half an hour before bedtime. Depends on whether you like meals or not, but sometimes a little calcium helps you a bit before you go to sleep, maybe a little bit of cheese or cereal, milk, something like that. And getting back to what Sue pointed out about exercise, there's a lot of research that shows that a little bit of light exercise 4 to 5 hours before bedtime is really helpful with sleep. So if you're troubled by either not falling asleep at night, which I define as 30 minutes or more not falling asleep, or if you wake up, as most of us do over about 30 years old, wake up at 2 o'clock, can't get back to sleep, see if your exercise helps a little bit. Time your exercise. You know, I'm a morning exerciser like Sue, but if I had sleep problems, I'd probably move my exercise to the evening, to the late afternoon, sometime like that. If you awaken during the night, use some relaxation techniques, and the rule of thumb is if you're in bed longer than a half an hour, get up. It's better to get up than to stay in bed ruminating about sleep. Even a little physical activity and exercise is the cheapest and best way to combat stress. Sue already brought up all the connections between exercise and depression and anger, and I would probably add anxiety to that list. Stress and anxiety is very important. No matter what your physical condition, start with something simple like an activity tracker. I don't know how many of you, I should have had a poll on this, but I hope some of you have Fitbits, have other little step pedometers, some simple ways of tracking your activity during the day, because it's really more about moving than anything else that helps with stress. Keep track of your daily activity in one way or another. Write it down. If you have a calendar, just write on each of the little squares how many steps you took per day or how much activity you had on an average day. Well, my second Eagle River picture, again from that same lake fishing trip, all the river was kind of overcapped by ice, and I thought these rocks just looked to me like a perfect example of how we all need to chill out during the day. Chill out, relax, take a little bit of time. It doesn't take much time at all. There are some personal techniques that I think are very important. You might want to start with a simple mindfulness exercise of a body scan. You might, in your chair right now, wherever you're standing or sitting, I hope you're sitting, think about all the muscles in your body and just take a minute to scan those muscles. Right now, as we're sitting here, what about the muscles in your neck and your upper back? Just scan those. And scan the muscles going down your back, all the way down to your buttocks. Just see what they feel like. Scan the muscles in your jaw. See if your jaw is clenched and tight. Scan the muscles in your lower body, your buttocks, your thighs, your calves. Just take a minute to do a simple body scan. Very important technique. Breathing is probably the root of all relaxation exercises. It's a very simple exercise, but if you, right now, in your chair where you're sitting, just take a few minutes to take a breath in through your nose, hold for a second or two at the top, and let that breath out through your parted lips. Breathe in through your nose at whatever rate you want. Hold for a second or two and breathe out through your parted lips. And maybe you want to put a hand right on your belly button and see if you can feel your stomach pushing out each time you take a breath in. Hold for a second and let out, and feel your stomach going down as you let out through your parted lips. It's just that simple. Maybe you're good at imagery. Maybe we could right now, don't have much time, but if you went to a beach and you were on that beach right now, feeling your feet barefoot in the warm sand, and feeling the warm sand all around, and maybe hearing some things around you like that big thump of those big breaker waves way out in the ocean, or maybe the smaller waves that sweep across the sand. Maybe you can hear things like maybe some birds making lazy circles in the sky above the beach, or maybe children playing way off in the distance. Maybe you can smell things that you relate to the beach. If you've been to the ocean, you all know that smell of the air that's sort of, it's salty and sort of fishy and very humid. It's that damp, fishy, salty air. Maybe you can smell that as you begin to take a walk down the beach in your bare feet, and you feel the crunch of the sand. If you've been on hard sand, you all know what that feels like, where your foot your heel kind of crunches into the sand, and you feel that deep crunch that moves all the way up your calves as you slowly walk down the beach, and feel the warmth of the sun coming down on your arms and your back and your neck, and you just feel totally relaxed. And the last, mindfulness. Think about where you are right now, the room you're in right now, and see if you can begin to shut off the chatter a little bit and focus on the present. That's what mindfulness is all about, being present. If the chatter comes about, oh, how long is this jerk going to talk, or when's this seminar going to end, just let that go and just come back to the way your body feels. Maybe the cool or warm air on your arms, your neck. Think about your breathing. Just follow your breath for a few minutes, just like in the breathing exercise. Just follow your breath and try as hard as you can to be in the present without thinking about the chatter from before, what happened yesterday. Just let that go. Just let focus away a little bit. Because in the end, these kind of simple exercises that I've given you really would help if you use them every day. None of these things work once. So you're not going to go away tonight totally relaxed the rest of your life. But if the body scan, the breathing exercise, that short imagery exercise really helped, or if mindfulness helped, just go back and do that tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sue.
Thanks, Dave. Now, what Dave just did was the absolute pinnacle of mind-body connection. Using your mind, using your breathing, scanning your body. And I want to come back to a few slides ago, yoga, how useful that is. And hopefully, like I said, that was the perfect example of what we are trying to relate to you through this webinar. Now, you might say to yourself, yeah, how can I get this done? And I did see a question. I'd love to do this, that. How am I supposed to fit this in with, working full time, getting 8 hours of sleep, etc. There are ways to do that, and I love this book, The Little Engine That Could, and you can too. You can fit it in. You need to make you a priority. Your spouse may try and make you a priority, but you need to do it. Your boss probably isn't, and your spouse maybe isn't, and your kids maybe aren't, and your neighbors maybe aren't. You need to just put this little safety net, this safety box around you to make you a priority. So some practical specifics. Examine your schedule with a critical eye. What can be delegated? What can be cut out? Do I really need to watch another rerun of Everybody Loves Raymond? Probably not. Prioritize. Find the time of day that works for you. Don't let any interruptions occur. Make it sacred. You need to be accountable to someone. Sometimes it may just be your own checklist. It may be a girlfriend saying, hey, I got it done. But make sure that you have some sort of accountability. And I mentioned already before, do you like to be by yourself with a DVD? Do you want to go to a class? You need to figure that out, maybe with some professional help, but I can't sit here and say what's best for you. I do like the last bullet point. Have things ready to go. If you like to exercise in the morning, get things ready the last thing before you go to bed. Have your stuff picked out, and that really helps you get a move on it. I already mentioned these things before, being consistent, finding something that works close to your house or in your house, a calm, cool place, kind of setting the correct mood, as Dave mentioned before. You want to be free from clutter when you are working out. Decrease the excess noise, unless, of course, you're in a gym and you kind of get energized by the clanging dumbbells and machines and people talking and checking on you. But you figure out what works for you. And as I mentioned before, find that your program will help decrease exercise. We are not here to add ways to increase your stress. You certainly have enough of that in your life. Also have some backup plans. Have a plan A and B almost on a daily basis. Okay, if this curveball gets thrown to me, how am I going to deal with that? And as I mentioned before, make yourself a priority because nobody else is going to do that. And then looking at every day, it's a new day, a new start, a new opportunity for success. Just put the past behind you, as any psychologist worth their weight in gold would tell you that also. And don't be a superman, superwoman. Just know your limits. And back to Dave.
I think this is almost the last slide, so I'm glad you guys have hung in for an hour. I just want to finish up with some attitudes that I think are extremely important in helping stress levels. The number one attitude in my book is optimism. It's so easy to see the glass as half empty rather than half full, and there's so much research, mostly done in Pennsylvania, Sue, by the way, by Martin Seligman, who is a very famous psychologist, about the positive effects of being optimistic on not only mental health but physical health as well. There are studies that show that optimism can be learned, and if you're interested, there's a wonderful book by Seligman about learned optimism, about the fact that people who are negative about their life can really learn to be more optimistic. It really helps. It helps our mental health and physical health. Personally, I think gratitude is second on my list. How often do we not act gratefully for the things that we have in our life? We often look at the things we don't have, and I think being grateful is extremely important. Forgiveness is just the opposite. Isn't that the opposite of anger? I mean, when you think about, I just remember that Amish school where some guy came in and shot up the whole school and killed a bunch of kids. And the family, all the Amish families actually brought the family of the shooter food and forgave him totally, forgave the family for what happened. I mean, that to me is the ultimate. How bad are we all at forgiving people? That just generates anger when we don't forgive. I'm a big believer in humor. I think we're all funny. I'm funny. You guys are all funny. And knowing how funny we all are is really important in our life. So keep your sense of humor. And lastly, you got to have a purpose in your life. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to know where God planted you to be purposeful in life. So think about where you want to go and what your purpose is in life. We all have one, and we often ignore that. So I will finish up now, and thank you all very much for attending.
All right. Thank you, David and Sue, for a really informative presentation, and that little exercise definitely got me relaxed, so I certainly appreciate that. We do have time for a few questions, and I'll start with a common question, and that is, will the slides be available? And the answer is absolutely yes. At the conclusion of tonight's presentation, I will email everyone that's attended a PDF version of the slides, so you can go back and revisit all the slides and anything that you missed. And an archive version will be available to stream on our website, mscando.org. So if you don't feel stressed out that you missed anything, we will certainly provide a copy of the slides for you.
We don't want them to be stressed out.
No, that would defeat the purpose. So just a couple questions. We received a couple questions that people are frustrated that their medical or mental health practitioners don't recognize the reality of stress, or that they bring up stress to their doctors, and they don't feel like it's being recognized as an actual symptom. Can you talk a little bit about why that's not been recognized a lot in the medical community, and what can people do to advocate for themselves and really get help if they are experiencing stress as a symptom?
You want to start, Sue?
Sure. I would say, if you're in an area where you have other options for healthcare practitioners, keep looking, because, anybody that is at all educated as to, the effects of stress on any disease process these days should know that stress is extremely detrimental. So keep looking for healthcare practitioners that will believe you and, buy into that. If you are, I'm sorry to say, stuck with somebody in a, certain area, then you're going to have to do some work on your own. Finding classes, meditation, yoga, DVDs, online resources that can help you work on stress yourself. Don't just think, okay, he said, she said, no, stress is, a bunch of hocus pocus. It shouldn't affect you at all. Do not believe that and move on.
I agree. These are old-fashioned doctors that see the body as everything from your neck down and your mind from your neck up. And if you have something they can find on a CT scan, that's good for them. But if they can't, then they think you're crazy, send you to a psychiatrist. Find another doctor, because there are so many doctors now that understand the mind-body connection. And it's very important in MS, because stress does have an effect on MS. We know that from research that's been done. So keep looking.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. Another question we receive a lot in regards to yoga. A lot of people have balance issues or vertigo or just have a hard time staying on their feet. Can you recommend any specific yoga programs or moves, such as chair yoga, that would be adaptable to people that have a hard time standing up?
Sure. There are a lot of nice yoga DVDs and classes that can be done just seated on a mat in a wheelchair. I would not recommend a Swiss ball. I love the Swiss ball or physio ball for balance and strengthening challenge. You certainly want to avoid that if you do have a lot of balance problems. But just search the internet, talk to your local MS chapter, because there are some great DVDs to follow. Pop them in. You can shut your brain off, do them from the chair, from the mat, lying, seated. If you can get onto all fours, that's great too. It's a fairly stable position. But I always emphasize to people, I don't want to be seeing you as a patient for a broken ankle because you are trying to help yourself, with yoga for your MS. So know is that one slide I had with the Superman symbol. Know your limits.
And to follow up on that, you also recommended avoiding hot yoga, and we had one person write in and just asking why that you would recommend.
It's a really straightforward, simple fact that heat is not great for folks with MS. So hot yoga is just a recipe for disaster. I've done it before. I hate it. I don't like it. Now, a lot of people love it. It's great for loosening up the muscles. Some people love to sweat like they are in, close to the Amazon in, July, but that's not for me. And it is certainly not the best type of yoga for folks with MS, because heat is a contraindication. You want to avoid heat for a number of physiological reasons. So hot yoga, put a little one of those does not equal signs with MS. There's a lot of other types of yoga that you can benefit from.
That makes sense. Another question we received specifically to combat lesions with MS. Would you recommend focusing on cardiovascular exercise, strength training, or both?
A really well-rounded exercise program would be best. So that would be some cardiovascular activity, some strengthening, some flexibility, some balance and coordination activities. Just a really nice, well-rounded program will be the best for you.
Excellent. We also received a question that's becoming more and more popular, and that's regarding marijuana. Where we've been getting a lot of questions on the webinars. Is that something that either of you are familiar with as far as combating stress, or something that you would recommend for stress and pain, or are there better alternatives?
Boy, Dave, I'll put that one in your lap. In the state where it is not yet legal, and I'm also not a medical doctor.
Right. That's kind of hard for both of us, but here's my simple-minded answer as a psychologist. I know that marijuana produces some cognitive problems, and that's what I would focus on more. I mean, I know in some states it's legal, some states you can buy it free, but I really am worried about the long-term cognitive effects because people with MS sometimes run into cognitive difficulties, and I would worry about the long-term effects. But probably better to ask your primary care or your neurologist.
Excellent. Thank you. Another good question, which I think that Can Do MS really focuses on, is on the family and care partners and the support partners. And if you had any suggestions for them feeling like they're to blame for either causing or not supporting the reduction in stress, any suggestions for support partners out there?
Come to a program.
Mm-hmm.
We have wonderful support partner groups, and I've run many of them over the years. And the support partners, actually, that's the most exciting thing that I do at the MS programs for Can Do, because the support partners are really an integral part of how people get along with MS, how they cope with it. So I think that's the main thing I would suggest, is to look into programs. We have lots of programs every year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're coming down towards the end of our time here, so we didn't get a chance to answer all of your questions, but I do want to remind you that Can Do MS has a number of programs online, including the Ask the Can Do Team program. So you can send in a question, and we'll try to get it answered by one of our MS experts. That can be accessed by www.mscando.org. We also have a number of other resources, including all of our archived webinars and library articles. Sue and David wrote a great article on stress management. That's a great supplement to tonight's webinar. And as I mentioned, tonight's webinar will be archived. You can access that by the end of the day tomorrow. We also have an e-news program that you can receive the monthly email. So please visit our website as well as the National MS Society's website. They have a number of great online programs and other resources. You can find programs on yoga with MS and other exercise programs with MS. So we're proud to be partnered with the MS Society, so please visit their website for other great resources. And then please join us for our next webinar, which will be on June 14th. It's the second Tuesday of each month. And we're really excited to introduce some new topics. And we're going to be talking about traveling just in time for summer. We hope you all get out and explore some new places and have some fun. But obviously there are some challenges there. So we're going to have a person with MS as well as an expert on traveling and finding accessible ways. So this will be on Accessible Travel Basics from Planning to Execution on June 14th. And again, as always, it's free of charge. So please join us then, and we sincerely appreciate everyone joining us tonight and being part of our active conversation here. And of course, thank you so much to Sue and David for your time and sharing of your expertise.